Hello and welcome to the table. So today we are checking out two of these digital disposable cameras. So the two cameras we're checking out are going to be the Camp Snap camera right here and the Flashback camera right here. So first we'll check out the Camp Snap because it's so simple to use. There's very little to operate on this one. This Camp Snap camera is the version 103, which is currently available on their website. I think it costs around $65 for this model. But what we have right here, we have a simple viewfinder here on the back. We have an LED flash. We have a digital counter right here. So let's go ahead and turn it on. You can see there's a button on the top. That's our shutter. But when you hold it down, it turns the camera on. And a counter right there, which counts how many images you have taken on the SD card of this camera. So we can see it right now, it's at about 108. Really only setting that we can change easily is going to be the flash. You can turn it on, off, or set it to automatic. So turning it on, you press the shutter button on the top. There we go. It just fires off. And again, it's a small flash, but it'll be useful for dark environments, indoors. And I think it gives you some of that vintage look when your pictures have the flash turned on and activated. We do have a USB-C port here on the bottom, so you could use that to charge the device as well as to plug it into your PC to get the pictures off the camera. A little door right here that's removable has some buttons to change the sound of the shutter, as well as to change the date that'll appear on the metadata of your photos. So you can put the date in if you'd like to. That's also where the SD card is. So you can take the SD card out and use a traditional SD card reader if you prefer. So we do have a lanyard hole on both sides of the camera, so you can use a lanyard, or you could even put a neck strap since there are two of them on there. Camera is very lightweight. It is only 3 ounces in weight, so it's very light plastic feeling. We have kind of this fakeish leather here on the front, which feels pretty good, and it comes in a whole variety of colors you can buy as well. So really the Camp Snap name, I think this was intended to be the camera you give to your kid as they go to summer camp, and they have a screen-free device that can still capture all of their memories for them. So that's really the whole idea behind it. So that is our Camp Snap camera, and we'll talk about the images it takes in just a few minutes, but let's chat about this flashback right here. So the flashback camera, if this looks familiar to you, it might if you're old like me, because this is meant to look like a disposable camera. You know, the traditional film disposables had the little turn wheel on the back like we have on the flashback. But what we have on this camera, again, the viewfinder right there, we have the spinning wheel. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel. That turns the camera on. So when we spin the wheel, you can see on the counter up here how many pictures you have left on your film, so to speak, I guess you could say. But you do load the exposures onto this camera via an app. And once you do that, the camera's ready to go. There is an on and off flash switch right here. So right now it's off, and you switch it to on, and you will see that the light turns red when it's ready. And usually it works. So let's go ahead and check that out. There we go. So the button on this one, at least my model, is kind of mushy, but that could be me. I've used this camera, I've dropped it a bunch, but it's not as crisp of a click on the shutter button as I'd like it to be. Do have the lanyard holder right here and a USB-C port. And now this USB-C port is only used to charge the camera. And so it does require the companion app to make this camera functional at all. There's no way to take the SD card out. There is no SD card as far as I can tell. No way to connect it to a computer. It is app-based only. So you have to have the app installed. So let me get that up and running, kind of give you an idea of how it works a little bit. So what we have right here is when your camera is on, you can see it's connected. It'll show you the battery level. So this one's about 68% charged. Out of this roll of film, I've done 2 pictures out of the 27. So I have 25 images left. And you have some options. You can unload your film to the lab. And what that really means is when you're done taking your 25 remaining pictures on here, you unload it, and you basically have to send the pictures over to Camp Snap through this app, and they, develop it for you, so to speak. And there's a timer involved. So it's at least 24 hours later when you get your images back. So that could be an upside, could be a downside, but it does kind of simulate that feel of a traditional disposable where you send it off to get developed and you get it back much, much later. The photo lab, again, is where all your pictures appear once they're developed. You get your little gallery, and you can sort through your pictures here and download them to your phone. So again, without that companion app, the camera is not really usable. But again, for people who are very tech savvy, for young people especially, that might be more of a plus. And so when it comes to the pictures these cameras take, they all use filters. Let me just be very straight off with you. They heavily rely on filters for their images to get kind of that dreamy vintage look to them. And so with the Camp Snap camera, you have a choice of 3 filters. There is a standard filter, a black and white filter, and a vintage filter. Standard filter is basically, imagine we went back in time to 2012, took a smartphone camera and shoved it in this device. That's about the quality of images you're going to get. So just no color adjustments, just how the pictures come out of the camera is your standard filter. Not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's just is what it is. The black and white filter is, of course, black and white photos. And the vintage filter kind of applies like a greenish hue to your images, if that makes sense. So that's just how that operates. Whereas with the flashback, we have 3 filters on here. They call it their Flashback Classic, Flashback Beta, and Black and White. So again, you have 3 options. The Flashback Classic filter is, again, a greenish hue to all your images, kind of that greenish tint, again, simulating some, I guess, exposure that your film might have. The Flashback Beta filter has kind of like a reddish pinkish hue on your images, and the Black and White is black and white. But again, you're going to get filtered images through these cameras in most cases. And so in terms of the images that they do take, the Camp Snap camera takes images that are 3264 by 2448, which is about 8 megapixel photos. And the flashback here takes images that are 2560 by 1708 in resolution, which is coming out to, I think it's a little bit more than 4 megapixels. So they're not huge megapixel counts, and they're very tiny sensors on these cameras because, again, they're inexpensive. They're meant to be grab and go. So if you're a megapixel peeper, these probably aren't for you. But again, in terms of price, being inexpensive, the Camp Snap comes in around $65, and the flashback comes in around $96. So what are we getting for this money? Let's take a look at some images, and we can kind of compare the picture quality between the two, and if either one will meet your expectations. So let's go ahead and check those out, and keep in mind that YouTube does, compress things, so it may not look quite as well on video as they do when they're blown up on a giant, computer monitor. So let's check that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of these images side by side. And so these pictures were taken all outdoors. This was kind of an overcast day. I tried to frame the images to pretty much be as close to each other as possible. And with the pictures on these cameras, again, keep in mind the Camp Snap is coming in at 8 megapixels and the flashback about 4 megapixels. So there's going to be a difference there as well. One thing I'll also mention is that with the the Camp Snap camera, you do get your EXIF data on the information, whereas with the flashback, there is no EXIF data available to you. So if that matters to you, just keep that in mind. That's what we're getting here. So with the Camp Snap camera on the left, we can see that there's a lot more detail in the picture. The picture is a lot sharper. With the flashback, again, the picture is a little bit more fuzzy. It has kind of more of that dreamy look to it. And if that's what you're going for, that might be your preference for these type of cameras. But like looking at the text on the side right here, we can clearly read the text on the Camp Snap, whereas on the flashback, it's a little fuzzy. It could be megapixel difference, but it just is what it is. So let's go ahead and check them out side by side. Again, we have sharper images on the Camp Snap camera. So if to you a sharper image is a better image, I think there's a clear winner here. Again, with both of the filters on these cameras, they're both leaning towards the greener side of things. So on that spectrum, both of these images are slightly more green than not. But being outdoors, we see a lot of greenery anyway. But again, you can kind of see the difference in quality here. So again, for me, sharpness kind of makes the picture look a lot nicer. So, it is what it is. So check that out. And we do see a lot more of that grain on the flashback images. So maybe more as you zoom in, you can see a lot more of that graininess to the picture, So you can see that side by side right there. And again, some of that grain is put in by these filters, somewhat artificially. you know, to kind of give you that look that you might be looking for. So yeah, on these images, like in real life, these animals here were very translucent, very shiny. And I do think that the Camp Snap picks up a lot more of that detail. You know, outdoor image of the cloudy sky. You can again see they're both kind of washed out, but the flashback tends to feel a little more washed out. Like particularly with these like deer statues right here. You know, the coloration was really, really bright and vibrant, but it's mostly washed out on the flashback. Yeah, so again, it's really just depending on what vibe you're going for and knowing what you're getting into. So, you know, I'm just sharing this with you so you have these for comparison. But yeah, definitely check out again. Let's zoom in on the detail on this tiger's face right here. Kind of give you that side by side. And that's really what you're getting here. So for me, I think the Camp Snap is a better camera. It's an easier camera to use, but I can leave those options up to you. And of course, just kind of in closing thoughts, honestly, with you, there are upsides and downsides to both of these cameras. And honestly, it really depends on what you prioritize. So with the flashback here, it relies on that app. And if for whatever reason this company that flashback is run by, if they go out of business and that app goes away, there's a good chance you won't be able to use this camera anymore. So there you have that to think about. With the Cam Snap camera, on the other hand, the downside here is if you really like the filters and you want to change them around, the process to do so is not so straightforward because since the camera is so simple, it does involve going to their website, downloading a file, putting the file on the camera, and they've had at least 3 different versions of this camera released. So the process has been a little bit different for each one. So if you're not tech savvy, the filters are not going to be easy to change for the Camp Snap. So those are really the minuses of both of these cameras. So again, looking at the images, you can kind of compare and see if either of these are a fit for you. But if you just keep it to the basic base settings, I think anyone would be pretty pleased by either camera. Just keep your expectations in check. Hope this was all helpful for you and have a nice day.